Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Jacob. Please take a look at the song The Order of Destiny by the funeral doom band Esoteric. I've always been intrigued by how the use of complex chords, normally only seen in jazz, contribute to a very chilly, dreamy vibe in the first half of the song. So that's interesting. Um, Funeral Doom. So we have an 11.5 minute song, which means we have about a minute and 30 seconds of music, worth of music to listen to. That's a joke, obviously. Let's get into this and see what Esoteric's doing with this interesting opening, which is what I'm looking forward to most. Yeah, so they always jump the gun on that, but it is still in 4. Looks like we're at about a 43 BPM, which is just bonkers slow. Oh, interesting little burst of speed there from our drums. Interesting having the reverb on the vocals. Yeah, it's every beat, it sort of expands and reverbs. A lot of tension in these chords. They are interesting though for metal, that's for sure. Yeah, a lot of these are on the and of 4. Really interesting for that to be the main accented hit throughout most of this track so far. These harshes are gnarly. They started off a little more traditional, but those higher pitched ones just... wow. Speaking of wow, where did this come from? Really interesting intervals too. And it's not even just the individual chords. The progression is interesting as well. Phrasing on here is weird too. Like, I can't find one. All right, the thing with doom metal, right there, they're holding out that long note, the fade out, right? Before we actually started fading out, I was like, are they fading out? I don't know. The volume is slowly transitioning, possibly. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm hearing things. Is that I feel like they can cut the tempo in half, and I'm seriously gonna have to wait 15 seconds for the second note, and I'm just like, are they gonna bring it? Are we gonna keep moving, or is the song over? Doom metal just has that element to it that you can't really ever underestimate their willingness to drag the tempo down. So at any point that it sounds like we're fading into something else or we're holding a note out, we might actually not be. We might actually just be, cutting the tempo down and getting ready to move into a new idea. So, I guess just a short recap on doom metal, especially funeral doom metal, since I feel like a lot of the stuff that I want to say is stuff I've said before, so I'm just going to wrap it up rather quickly, not really dive deep into too much of it. Doom metal, really slow tempo. At one point, I said we were at what, 43? That is just and I probably should have checked there at the end too. We were at some really slow tempos there at the end. So ridiculously slow. If we double timed this and brought it up to 86, which is not exceptionally brisk, we're barely getting into the faster tempos by classical notation standards. It cuts the song down to 5 minutes long, 6 minutes long, give or take. And if we bump it up again, um, to what would that be, 132, which now we're talking a bit of a faster song there. We have a 3 to 4 minute track, and that was kind of my joke at the beginning when I said it's an 11-minute song, so we have about a minute's worth of music in here at a decent tempo. This is not that long of a song. It's long because it's stretched out. There's so much space between the notes, between the attacks, between the syllables even, and that's what makes it doom metal though, is that it really explores these sounds and allow them to resonate, which is cool, sometimes. I personally, I think my big thing with doom metal is I wouldn't mind sitting in these chords for so long if there was more to them. The chords at the beginning were interesting, um, in that they were fresher for the style. And we'll talk, yeah, about that in a bit, but it was also the same 3 or 4 chord. I think it was three, because I think out of our 4 chord progression, we repeated one of them. The first and second chords were the same, and then we had movement on 3 and 4, if I remember correctly. Um, After you've heard it once, twice, 3 times, you've picked up on it. You know what they're exploring. You know what the emotion says, and the fact that we have to listen to it for 3.5 minutes. Getting one chord every 5 seconds. It's just not for me. I need a little bit more energy or change or diversity in the music I listen to casually. But I think that's the important thing between a critical listen and a casual listen, is that I can appreciate the artistic elements of utilizing this slow moving tempo with the sparse changes to it. There's really only 3 major sections in this track, and they're all, give or take, 3.5, 4 minutes each. We sit in them a long time without much change. I can appreciate what it does and why people would come to it. It's just not something I would go out of my way to listen to. Um, but I do like the idea of sitting in. It's like the opposite of black metal, or no, not black metal. It's the opposite of like tech death. I talk about tech death. The notes are moving too fast for me to really connect with the chords of the notes. This is the opposite. I really get to connect with the chords. I just need something in the middle. um, but yeah, that's like all of tech. I mean, all of Doom right there is that it's slow. We really sit within these chords. We do have a moving guitar solo, which I thought was interesting, and we'll get to that later. That was different for me, and our tempo does increase a little bit in this track. We probably move up to a mid to high 50, possibly into a 60s for a little bit, but I think it's balanced by the end where I'm pretty sure we dip under 40. A lot of this track, like I mentioned, is just kind of sitting in a sound and repeating it over and over and over. Um, and that's how most of the song is crafted. Now, what I really want to talk about, like I said, I'll get the general doom metal stuff out of the way there. I really want to look at some of the interesting things going on that kind of deviate from that. First of all, we do have those jazzier chords at the beginning. They definitely introduce a dreamlike atmosphere, especially when you compare them with the chords that we had in our final 3 to 4 minutes. Very similar idea musically. Sitting in chords for bars at a time. Bars are taking up 3 to 4 seconds each, and running through a 3 chord progression. Again, if I'm remembering correctly, but totally different chords, totally different vibes. Um, Definitely, even if it's just a 1 note change, you change the middle note of your triad, you can drastically alter the feeling of your chord and drastically change the feeling of your song. And that's exactly what happens here. I wish we would have explored more of that, but I don't know what change it would have really made other than, like I'd mentioned, more chordal changes per section. But once we got out of our opening idea, we kind of shifted towards more metal style pentatonic ideas um, for our chord bases. But it was an interesting start. It wasn't too jazzy. And honestly, if the requester hadn't specifically mentioned it, I don't know that I would have picked up on it. A lot of the distortion was helping to cover it up, and it was highly tense, which I would have placed it in a similar category to the later ones as well, the later chords. It really is a small element of the chords themselves that kind of give it this spice. That's exactly what it's a spice, and it's if you're not looking for it, you won't taste it. It's not like garlic. It's not like cayenne pepper. It's more of a subtle spice that you would add in if you have a seasoned palate. You might be able to pick up on it, but casual listener or someone who is less trained to pick up on more nuanced spices like this might not pick it out, but it certainly adds to the flavor of the dish, or in this case, the flavor color of the chords. Um, and yeah, it does create something very dreamlike at the beginning, which I think is interesting because the rest of the track doesn't go in that direction. Everything feels very palpable, very physical, especially by the time you get to the end of the track, and it is just overbearingly weighty, the opposite of that kind of ethereal vibe we have at the beginning. Now, after this, we hit an interesting section. We utilize a similar chord progression, metal it up a little bit, and we return back to our opening rhythm with that accented and a 4 on every other beat. So you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4, and it's really strange because we have the downbeat of 1, and then half of a beat before 1, 2 bars later, and it creates all this anticipation and weight. and you're like, all right. And when you're ready to hit the downbeat, they jump the gun and they get there before you're ready for it. And it always feels like they're sort of tripping up. And at first I thought there was a time signature thing where maybe it was like 7/8. But no. I'm pretty sure it's 4/4, just accenting on the end of 4 rather than 1. And it's every other bar. So you get this really long space of no accents. Um, it's interesting. I'll say that. Over top this though, there is a shreddy guitar solo going on. It might be a little slower than I think what most people think of shred, but it was shred for 60, 55 beats per minute. Shred for a slower tempo. And it just goes off for multiple minutes. I don't have a read on it narratively or emotionally. Interestingly, in the production, it kind of faded to the background. That emphasized and a 4 stuck out a lot more to me and was in the spotlight more than the solo was. It was only in the breaks, the moments when our rhythm guitars would stop playing, that you would hear the guitar very prominently. Otherwise, it was sort of in the background, not completely hidden, but not in the spotlight either. It's a very interesting decision, and it's just going off lots of eighth notes and 16th notes, playing quick, kind of going against the general idea of doom metal, which is slower music. It's a massive pace pickup there, and an interesting clash based on where we were before and where we go after. After the solo, though, we go into a new section that has this really interesting chord progression. We shift to what I think is a compound time signature, something based around 3. I don't know if it's 6/8. I don't know if it's 3/4. Um, but we have two groups of 3 per bar for 2 chords. So we got like bum, bum. And then the next series of chords only get 1 bar each. So every 3 hits, we start a new chord. Ba, 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 ba. Something along those lines. I'm not singing the right notes, just giving the idea of the fact that we're quickening the pace of this progression. But the progression itself is also interesting because some of the chords are very dark with a lot of tension to them. Others are a little more brighter, some are melancholic, some are hopeful, and it's just this rapid flurry of emotions tossed your way. And to this moment, I still don't know what our time. Well, I think the time signature was still 3/4. That's what makes the most sense to me. The phrasing is what was off, though. A lot of music is based around 4 bar, 8 bar, 12 bar, 16 bar. This was not, like I mentioned, we have 4 bars at the beginning, 2 chords, 2 bars each. And then we have a series of 1 bar chords, and I could never get the full picture here. And I don't know when it moves into the next, or when it repeats, I should say, when it goes back to the held notes. I think there's held notes at the end of it too. We have a series of 1 bar chords, and then like maybe 1 2 bar chord before we start back over with the other 2 2 bar chords, and it's just, I don't know, it gets very difficult to read on a first listen. If I could rewind it, listen to it again, just really focus on the time, maybe even use pen and paper for it, it would not be that difficult to transpose. But I did not pick it up on a first listen. After this section, though, we move into our final section, which is what took us out of the track. And it's interesting that we returned to the rhythmic ideas and the structural ideas of our intro. Just these really long chords. growling above it, slow drums, but we kept the chords we were just in, or some of them anyways. There's still a smorgasbord of feelings here at the end that are tense and fearful and melancholic and excited, or maybe positive, some sort of positivity. And it's interesting because it goes from a track that is dreamlike and tense to free flowing and faster with the solo to a smorgasbord of emotions in a whirlwind of pacing. I'm not really sure where the ground is. I said I had a hard time finding one, to finding solid ground in the structure, the rhythmic element, but still exploring this plethora of emotions. And I don't have a read on that. It's an interesting story that didn't put any pictures into my mind. I don't have any way to tie it all together. It's interesting. I'm gonna hit some lyrics and see if that unlocks anything. Um, the only thing I didn't touch on are the vocals, and they're just, I mean, I should have included them at the beginning. They're pretty typical doom metal vocals. It's just long growling. Oh no, it's not just long growling. Let's touch on this real quick. The vocals got wild there in the middle. Super gnarly. Went from a lower end growl to a higher end. I don't even know if it's a fry because it didn't sound like false chord usage. It just sounded like spit and saliva burgling. That's not a word, but like bubbling and gurgling underneath his speech, which was nasally and forced. It sounded demonic in a lot of ways, very otherworldly. Um, but we really only had that there in the middle. The opening was mostly growls, if I remember right, and we ended mostly growls. And then, of course, we had our lengthy 30-second fade out, whatever that might represent. Um, yeah, those vocals, though, in the middle, that was just wow. All right, now I'm going to hit some lyrics and see if it unlocks any hints to understanding this track better. Nope. Although I suppose the lyrics might help if I could understand them. The beginning, I think, sets a really interesting mood. The walls ripple, closing in, driven forth, transcending streams of consciousness. Definitely falls in line with the uh, the hazy, dreamlike atmosphere that they utilize in the beginning of the track. That same type of visualization, of description of the environment, is not utilized elsewhere in the track. It's possible that the beginning is some sort of uh, variation of reality where walls can move and ripple and seem out of sorts. The rest of the track, though, I really don't get much from other than the ending, which says, the journey twists as you had it planted, the seeds of what is aught, misfortune lurking every crevice of this crooked quest. Frameworks, paths of truth and life, nothingness, only what we may become. So there is a large quest at hand, a task that has basically hit every hurdle and roadblock available, um, and is difficult to walk on, but is one full of truth and life, both of which are nothing, only what we may become, as it states. Which almost feels like the quest, the journey, the path, the task at hand is what you make of it. But everything in the middle flies right over my head. I have no idea what this task is, what our narrator is attempting to do, or what they're singing about somebody else doing. I have no idea. For me to reinterpret their intentions through the lens of the journey being more important, and what it brings or what you bring to it rather than what it brings to you. So I can't, I don't know. I'm a bit lost here. Doom metal, man. Those are my thoughts on Esoteric's The Order of Destiny. What did you think of this track? Was there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you enjoyed, maybe didn't touch on, or something that I didn't dig into deep enough? You felt maybe I should have? Maybe you have your own perspective on things. I don't know. Put that stuff down in the comment section. Above that, if you could, head into the description box. There's a link in there for Linktree. Takes you here. You can find my music, links to the Discord server, ways to support the channel, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. Alright, so that wraps it up for today. We'll be back tomorrow to finish off the week with our final 3 videos. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.